Manners respect, people. Manners respect. Manners respect, people. Manners respect. You know, even though me I said manners respect for a month now, sometimes we still make mistake and put in the split between the two. So even though where I say consciously you try to change things, the things them where you're done program with already in people, it's hard. It's hard for you to get away from the things then that you're taught. It's hard even if you want to change it, it's not easy. It's continuously doing the things to make changes and accept the changes them where you make. Okay? So all of these things I am understanding, I am learning, I'm going through. And I don't say we're not perfect already. So if we're not perfect, we must expect that there's gonna be growing pains, it's gonna be accidents that's gonna happen, mistakes or lessons that's gonna be learned from all situation. I said this year it's kind of like some of the on my own type of thing. And that's how I feel. You're on your own. So me learning and growing and understanding. Same thing with the people that want to subscribe to my channel. That's them will grow because eventually them will go see the type of person me is or see who me is. Because them will go there consistently I listen and I tune in and I either comment or share or whatever it is what them I do. Silent listeners them to the same thing. And not everybody want to talk. Some people just want to listen. But I say, even within ourselves, sometimes people going back to the same mistake, the same problem. There's never ever gonna be no solution to the problem unless we look for a solution to the problem, you know. Me I look upon it like say if people make you aware of something, right? And for you make things better, where them highlight or something where you can improve. And I like them I say, oh, this is life threatening, so it can't change. I am saying is if somebody tell you something to improve yourself, or something for you listen to, we don't listen to each other, you know. Until we say anything black not good already. So oh you go listen to something we're not good. All of them things that is so stupid. So absolutely no make no sense. The things them we take up and put on our head. The things them where we glorify, the things absolutely nonsense. And that one of the biggest downfall, absolute nonsense where we are take. And that makes sense. Right? The absolute nonsense we take and that makes sense. It don't make no sense, but we take it up and I put it on our head. And I publicize and I big up this foolishness. That's why I'm telling you, somehow we have different agendas. And that me get to realize now, so enough people have a different agenda from uplifting, putting the people them in a positive life. Those things are not part of where them are strive for. So some know say when they talk about sellout and them things there, it don't have to be sellout. It's just people who don't have no care about our culture, our roots, anything like that. We need to get better now, people. We honestly need to get better as people. I'm gonna tell you, say, or sometimes we're bitter do on certain things, or just we not take it to heart, we put it in our heart. It make it control our heart. That are the hunger thing in our heart. If you're mad with a person and wanna make plans and you change your mind, why not just call and say, yo, I'm gonna change my mind? Sometimes the things that I say, people, the don't care attitude, the attitude that says I don't care about anything except myself. You see that attitude that we have towards each other? And the worst thing, we'll never make it any better with that attitude. Just the fact that we're not care enough to look out for each other. And then we make it personal. We can't make certain things. Why we have to make it personal? Why do we have to make it personal? We just deal with situation like big people. You see, that's why I say the past was way better than now. Obviously, we have advancement and stuff like that. But does it make us better? No. Many of them exploration, them highlight and then details that I'm going through is gonna prove it. So the only betterment is within. Because all of these people had fight from the day them born. And the war with them was unrealistic to win. But them never care. They never look upon it like that. So this is why I say, even now when we have the freedom to even conversate about certain things. Nobody no want to hear the things that we're uplifting and positive. That's why I say my channel is not a TikTok channel. It's educational. It's learning. It's understanding, making things better. Okay? I'm gonna say people point of view is gonna be different. I stress them things because so the people them have no sense. And obviously I'm not gonna argue with them people. I don't wanna have a conversation with those people. But for those ones who choose not to understand and choose not to listen, choose not to make a difference, choose whatever it is them downfall is, go ahead. Do uno. Whether good or bad, do uno. Because no matter what is out there, the people that may want self-destruct, them are going to self-destruct anyways. So whatever them do and say, it's for them, not for me, not for us. Because you have them and you have us. The them they don't act like the us, and the us definitely don't act like the them. So let the people them who want to be uneducated fools be who they want to be, because that's your choice. All right, so people may tell us that it's Black History Month and it's um it's highlighting the greatness of us, the beautifulness of us. And me tell us that the stuff that when me are talk about and only a few people is out there. And we need more. We definitely need more of us to do the right thing. But again, me not drag nobody and force nobody to do the right thing. Just the people that want betterment. Just the people that want betterment. Just the people that want more. Just the people that want enrichment of our culture and of our creation. be given the proper platform, shout out, highlight. So I don't really, I admit, what I say, I have enough people on my platform so I can continue going live and go and document and educate. So later on, it'll be important for myself also, right? So this one now is the rise and fall of St. Louis Black Hospital, the color of medicine. Again, this one have 81,000 views, but 2.2 thousand thumbs up. And we tell us them things here, they're on available on YouTube, right? So I know nothing for the people and go highlight them people here, big up them people here. But when it comes down to sensationalism and TikTok, it's not important to our culture. Now, what I say, I know everybody are gonna do the same thing, but it would be nice if we had more of us doing the right thing. I mean, no say enough because enough people don't understand the things them when we talk about, right? Them not go make it penetrate in them brain for them. Even if them have them little brother, them niece, them nephew or something, to introduce them to one hero of the past, one great person, other than Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, those ones, but the ones that must stand behind those guys. So this is why I say I choose them people to highlight, because these people have a highlighted life. Them choose me to highlight them. Them story needs to be told. And again, every time I start off my program, I always start off with an empty book, right? And then empty page, not an empty book. And then me find a page and me start with my lesson from this, because I tell you say all of them things here, if them don't teach in a school, what's stopping them from teach them in a house? Eh? What stop them from teach, educate in a yard? That's why I'm saying I've come to realize enough people do not care. They don't care enough about this. That's why I'm say it's like-minded people. I look for 12,000 people, but it's not gonna be people where don't understand. It's gonna be people that do understand. Like-minded people. Now 12,000 people on my platform, trust me, nice. Cause then, right, the word will be going out there a lot more than it is now. And I don't have a problem now or then, because it's gonna be in the same platform of uplifting, positive, helping each other, businesses, economic. Them things are so important. Anybody can do sensational. All them have to do is just find the latest trend in and that's it. But me want to find the greatest people them that ever exist. Them people there, me a gravitate to. So as we go on our journey, I thank the people them will like share the program, comment on the program. Much love and appreciation. That means that people don't want education. Not everybody wants education. Not everybody wants this. That's why I keep on saying it's not for everybody. As we proceed with the lesson, story, educational program.
Economic system. To understand why the grand opening of Homer G. Phillips Hospital was such a significant event, you first need to know a little bit about the history of St. Louis. Homer G. Phillips Hospital is proof of how the excellence of a few affected so many. When you look at the history of St. Louis around 1905 through 1930,
It was a time when a lot of those organizations, civic organizations, were fighting. But it wasn't just in St. Louis, it was all over the country. It's what I call a 100 years of emancipation without freedom. Emancipated 1865, and people had to fight all the way to 1965 before all those, basic freedoms and given the same kind of rights and benefits that everybody else has.
I mean, we're in the Jim Crow era in Missouri, which, certainly is a border state, right? So, we aren't in the deep South, but certainly we're sort of still thinking about, Black folks were non-treated equitably here, right? Like it was sort of the vision was to get across the river to Illinois, and that was a sort of the true north.
St. Louis was certainly one of the most segregated cities in the United States after the Civil War because of the black migration from the South that took place, and a lot of the blacks moved north along the Mississippi River, and St. Louis was one of the stopping off points. One of the important things was that St. Louis was so segregated because the blacks were in one area of St. Louis, the Italians in the other, and Germans in the other.
Well, the Ville.
Okay, you see, they had Italian on one side, them have German on the other side, them have black on the other side. So even then, the people stick to them people. Understand? At least then the people them support them people as we proceed, people.
The Italians in the other, and Germans in the other.
Well, the Ville was on the outskirts of St. Louis. It originally was not part of the city, and it belonged to a white florist. And he had a racetrack, and he had an inn where people would stop off. The Ellardsville at first, that's the original name. And it was short over time to the Ville.
So the Ville was actually it was a stable community. It was a very stable, very well-known African American community, and it was the site of the first African American high school west of Mississippi, Sumner.
We had Poro College, which was one of the first schools for the training of African American women in the beauty culture business. Chuck Berry also was a student at that school, I understand.
Annie Malone Home, she was one of the first Black female entrepreneurs in the United States, created a foster care home for Black children.
We had Turner School for Handicapped Youngsters, built in 1925, the first school of its kind for African American youngsters in the United States. I think one important thing to remember is that many of the people who worked in the Ville lived in the Ville. And so you had a climate where you had the workers plus the professionals all intermingling, attending church together, seeing each other on a daily basis, which made it a special place to live.
Nowadays, they always talk about a walkable community. The Ville was the original walkable community. We had everything we needed in our community. So we're talking about a segregated neighborhood. But the key was that we had a diverse population of people in there from different income levels. We could walk anywhere to the store. We had grocery stores. We had fresh fruit and vegetable stands. We even had a movie theater in the Poro.
The neighborhoods were Black neighborhoods. There was the Black doctor, the Black lawyer, the Black administrators. Folks lived in the same neighborhood. So it gave us an opportunity to see professionals, to see tradesmen, to see business owners actually interact in their own neighborhood. We had these role models that were there. Certainly it was segregated. Certainly it's Missouri. Certainly it's just north of the Mason-Dixon line. But at the end of the day, we had an opportunity to just be kids growing up in a community that looked like us.
That's almost non-existent today, because what we've gone is we've gone to the malls. So when you go to the malls, people are coming from neighborhoods they don't live in and getting service. Whereas when I was a kid,
Didn't have unemployment. Why? Because all of the stores and things that was in your community had to hire people who lived in the community to service these people.
The Ville being less than a square mile, it made it a community where people felt connected. Money stayed in the community a number of times before it disappeared. I think that's important to remember because
See? People, we used to support each other.
build wealth in the community by wealth staying in the community. And I think another thing it's good to remember, it thrived because others couldn't. Let me explain that. Many of the teachers and professionals were forced by segregation to work in the community. So many of the people who lived here got the best because they couldn't get the best. Another thing that happened during that time, teachers were not allowed to get married. So many of the students became their family.
Doctors, they couldn't get married during that time. And my Uncle Red, who became medical director later on, married my Aunt Dorothy, who was a school teacher, but they had to keep it hidden during the time they were married for the first 4 years.
And look on that. Even marriage. Teacher them not allowed to get married. So you see the rules them where them did have before. That's why I'm trying to show you say we have to look on the rules them, you know. We have to look on the rules and the regulations.
It was just thought that doctors couldn't perform their duties if they were married early. Or school teachers were thought that they couldn't perform as a school teacher if they had a husband. I don't know why the social structure was like that, but that's the way it was.
Teachers, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, prominent businessmen, all lived in the Ville. It was a thriving community with people making money, and most of the stores and all the business places were owned by Black people. This was great to live in the Ville. We even had a movie there, Poirot Hotel, Annie Malone. So Annie started the Poirot Hotel. And when you wanted to be an attorney, the only place that you could go was Lincoln.
I'm probably the only person.
Okay, people. Again. Back then we're independent, even in a state of segregation. We were independent, got smart, knowledgeable, skilled. So we always have skills, you know. We always have skills.
The only place that you could go was Lincoln University, and Lincoln did not have a law school. So they started the law school in the Poirot Hotel, and Black attorneys taught young men to be attorneys. So this all happened at the Poirot Hotel in the Ville.
I went to Sumner High School, and across the street from my high school was the Teachers College. Around the corner was the branch of Lincoln University's law school. So we saw students who were becoming lawyers. So what I saw as a high school student is I saw the extension of education that let me know that where I was going to high school 4 years later was not the end of my educational system, but it was the springboard, because I saw other people going to college, working on their PhD. They looked good to me. They looked like champions of the community.
Attorney Homer G. Phillips is sort of an enigmatic historical figure. Many people know certain elements of his life, but there's a lot more that hasn't been discovered about Attorney Homer G. Phillips. He was born John Wesley Phillips. I do have evidence. There's a small annotation in a newspaper from Sedalia around 1899 that announces that a John Wesley Phillips has changed his name to Homer G. Phillips, Homer Garland Phillips. I think that sort of name change preceded his matriculation to Howard University Law School. Many people don't know that attorney Homer G. Phillips was a staunch advocate for civil rights, Black civil rights. He was a staunch advocate for Black voting. He was a staunch Republican activist. He helped get President Herbert Hoover elected in the Midwest region. He was also a staunch advocate for equal rights, and particularly working against sort of rising segregation policies in the city. So Homer G. really fought against the implementation of deed restrictive covenants, for instance. Homer G. actually was instrumental in securing over $200,000 in relief for those Black families who were affected in the East St. Louis race riot in 1917. And that itself really sort of catapulted him to not only local recognition, but also national recognition.
Very, very popular man in St. Louis. They wanted him even to run for mayor of the city of St. Louis during those times. And I think that if he had ran, he was so popular, he probably would have won, becoming the first African-American mayor in the city of St. Louis in the 1930s.
Homer J. Phillips was one of the many, many African-Americans whose parents came out of the Civil War, got a taste of freedom in terms of the Reconstruction, when the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution were passed, abolished slavery, granted citizenship, and called for equal treatment of all citizens. The opportunity to build a Black family, became a lot more realistic with the end of slavery, because one of the major aspects of slavery is that it made a precise attack on that basic unit of social organization, the Black family. When you sell the child this way, the mother that way, and the father that way, you create an incredible crisis for those families, from which we have.
Okay, people. Them things are important, because even from then, it was deconstruction of the family, the unity, right? It's very important for understand, say, family unity is the key. As we proceed, people.
Recovered. So you have to see Homer G. Phillips as one of the products that came out of that Reconstruction era.
He was an attorney, a very prominent attorney, who had a strong sense of social justice. And he had lent his name and his expertise to a number of projects in the neighborhood, of uplifting the community. He had a particular interest in health, and I'm not so sure why, but this was a subject that just really caught his attention.
Not only was Homer G. a lawyer, he was also involved in distributing low-interest loans to African-American community members. And he was also a part of the newspaper business. So he was a part of the newspaper business in Sedalia, Missouri, his hometown. But he also was a partner in newspapers here in St. Louis, so particularly the St. Louis Argus, which was one of the first African-American newspapers in St. Louis. But then he began to sort of switch and begin to work with Judge Nathan Young later on in his life, when he realized that there's a sort of massive transition happening among Black voters, namely that Black voters are switching from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, right? And so the St. Louis Argus and the St. Louis American and Homer G's interaction with both of those actually mirrors that sort of transition.
The newspaper business was extremely relevant in the African-American community earlier, particularly when you had this great migration from the South. I was always interested in public policy because I thought that had an impact on people's lives. And I thought that having a Black newspaper would enable me to have some impact. Our National Trade Association has called us the #1 Black newspaper in the country the last 6 years. We're the largest weekly newspaper of any kind in the state of Missouri. So I'm very proud of what's happened with an institution that was started in 1928. Homer Phillips, a lawyer and activist who we admire a great deal here, was a part of the original ownership of the St. Louis American. And I would say Homer Phillips, the person who was held in high esteem by his community, we tried to use that as sort of an example, a model for how we should conduct ourselves as a newspaper.
He was also very active in getting African Americans elected to public office. He supported a bond issue, $8 million bond issue, with the understanding that $1 million would go for construction of a hospital for African Americans that would be run by African Americans and operated by them. He wanted to be a community control hospital, and he wanted to be in the African American community.
City Beautiful Bond by Mayor Henry Keel was a massive infrastructure plan. Over $80 million to improve city infrastructure, to provide new buildings for the city. And that's the time when you have Black doctors who are beginning to say they needed a place to train. They needed a place where they could sharpen their medical skills, where they could get access to patients, and where they could really sort of become higher echelon physicians, meaning specialized physicians, which requires extra years of training. Originally, Homer G. Phillips was actually opposed to a segregated hospital. He did not advocate for any type of segregation. That included segregation in hospitals, which sort of goes against kind of the popular understanding of Homer G., right? That he led the movement to get Homer G. Phillips Hospital started. That eventually happened, but initially Homer G. actually would have preferred that the two city hospitals in St. Louis actually be integrated. But when the city sort of said, we're going to stick with segregation, again, segregation policies are being implemented at this exact same time that were not there before, right? This is due in part to sort of Black migration from the rural South. Many people are coming through St. Louis, stopping there, right? So the Black population is expanding rapidly. And the old city hospital for African Americans, City Hospital number 2, was not enough.
And this was People's Hospital that was inadequate. And also they put Blacks in the City Hospital number 1 in the basement behind the steam pipes. So because of the poor care that Blacks were getting, and because St. Louis had a large influx of Blacks from the South after slavery, Homer G. Phillips thought that this would be the best thing to do, to have a hospital totally built for the Black community.
And so Homer G. was instrumental in getting a key provision in the 1923 bond issue for a Negro hospital. There was debate about whether that Negro hospital should be separate from City Hospital number 1, if it should be close to City Hospital number 1.
There were those who said, let's put it as an attachment, an annex to the White Hospital under a white administration. He said no.
So Homer G. said instead, and many agreed, that if they weren't going to have a hospital where they could practice autonomously, doctors and nurses could practice autonomously, where Black patients could have dignity, not to suffer the sort of indignities of white physicians, then they needed a completely separate hospital.
He went to the Board of Aldermen, where it was finally decided that it would be a separate hospital, because they wanted to renege on that at first.
And that debate took 10 years, right? So from the 1923 bond issue to 1933, ground is initially being broken on the Homer G. Phillips Hospital.
And all through that time, Jim Crow was raging. St. Louis City was extremely segregated. I'm talking about most Black votes were concentrated east on the other side of Jefferson Avenue. Then it was Grand. Then it was Kingside before they started expanding west. But the important point is that shortly after the bond issue was passed, Homer G. Phillips was assassinated right there on Delma and Euclid.
It's unfortunate, and he didn't really live to see his dream come to fruition, because under mysterious circumstances, he was shot by 2 gentlemen on his way to his office on a streetcar, a murder which was never solved, by the way.
Debates will, vary again according to why Homer G. was murdered. It seemed initially that the 2 individuals who were witnessed shooting Homer G. Phillips shot him because of debates about an estate check that Homer G. would not disperse to his client. There was a dispute about whether, the daughter of a man or his sort of younger wife would get the estate. And it was a sizable estate. I believe it was around $3,000. Homer G successfully secured the money for the daughter of this man, but he charged $1,000 for his fee. They did not pay that fee. And so it was assumed that Homer G was murdered because he did not disperse the whole of that check. 2 individuals were caught, they were apprehended, they were identified in lineups, they were even brought to trial, but neither were convicted of the crime. It's strange to me, at least, and it's strange to other people, that 2 young African-American men who were witnessed publicly shooting this man were not convicted of the crime. That's interesting to me.
Of course, the killer was never apprehended. And of course, if you don't look for people, you don't find them. And I'm sure in those days and the circumstances behind it, there was not a lot of looking, because it would have taken effort to find. And that was not high on the priority scale, as we would say now, to find out who killed him.
I don't know either way. I don't think there is going to be a definitive answer as to why Homer G was assassinated, murdered, however you want to sort of describe that. But it is curious to me that these 2 young men who had arrest records before this, right, were not.
You want to see the 2 criminals, them too. Them look like 2 criminals too. Boy, may I tell you, I'm telling you, some people, for them, energy is just negative energy right through them life till then come back and change themselves. Right? It's sad though, people. Every time somebody great come out or feel culture, that it's always tragic. We always choose to eliminate for we great for no reason. Well, them are gonna find a reason, but whatever reason it is, it's not a good enough reason. That's how I look at it. As we proceed, people.
Were not convicted of the crime. Were they paid? No one knows. I mean, was this a hit? No one knows. Was this really about the estate check? No one knows. Because that case was not closed, I mean, that really sort of paved the way to the institution itself being named after Homer G. Phillips.
It is the number 1 most prominent unsolved murder in the history of the city of St. Louis. He paid a price for this facility, paid with his life. He's the kind of murder that you have to put on the same level as a Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, a Homer G. Phillips. Even though we don't speak that much enough about him, you will not find any monument anywhere outside of this facility to the memory or to the incredible contribution of Attorney Homer G. Phillips.
Calls were immediately made to name the hospital after Homer G. So right after his death, right? And it seemed relevant to put his name on this hospital. But you do have individuals like David Grant who would later say naming Homer G. Phillips Hospital is actually sort of a double-edged sword, right? On the one end, it is certainly an institution of pride. It's a vision of progress, particularly in this neighborhood. On the other hand, it still is a segregated institution, right? So even though the history of segregation has produced this sort of jewel in history, as it were, it's still a segregated institution. And Homer G. fought every type of segregation tooth and nail, right? And I wonder, were Homer G. alive today, what would he really think about his name being on this institution?
That was supposed to be Colored Hospital number 2. And of course, it was always number 2. I came from that era and I understand the 1, 2, A, B. So I do not call those hospitals, I call them by their name. I called City Hospital, not City Hospital number 1, but it was either City Hospital or it was Max Stark Law. And Homer Phillips Hospital was Homer G. Phillips Hospital, not City Hospital number 2.
Both sort of sentiments are there. They exist simultaneously. It is important that we sort of remember this Black lawyer at this Black institution, but at the same time, the circumstances that produce this institution themselves are, deplorable.
When Homer G. Phillips opened up, it was a great day of celebration. Thousands filled the streets. All dignitaries came. The newspapers posted as one of the best African American hospitals in the community, St. Louis, and the world.
Again, you have to remember the time also. So this is 1937. And this is a time when Roosevelt himself is very anxious about the war effort and really reaching out to the African American community. Frankly, it may not have been the president as much as it was Eleanor Roosevelt, who really was the driving force for social change. And so she perhaps was the one who moved Harold Ickes, who was Secretary of the Interior, to support the Homer G. Phillips Hospital. And in fact, he was here during the program, during the opening of the hospital, the opening ceremony. So it really was a national event.
The mayor of St. Louis was there, Bernard Dickman. But what's interesting about him is that he actually, sort of before he became mayor, was involved in the St. Louis Real Estate Exchange, which was heavily involved in sort of restricting housing in St. Louis and steering, Black and white individuals to different parts of town, right? So even though the mayor sort of celebrated this hospital and sort of also celebrated too that he was able to build this hospital, right, as opposed to his Republican predecessor, Victor Miller, the hospital project languished for a decade under his administration. So in many ways.
Have you ever felt like the career path?
So remember, I take them 10 years to actually build the hospital, So a year under one administration, it just sit down there and languish, right? Somebody else have to come and give the go ahead. But I'm gonna tell you, say stopping progress is like it's a hard farm, It's a heartless farm. You hear me I say? Because the very fact say a person is just gonna look at it and say, I am gonna do this just because. Hate is a terrible thing people have, At that time I say hate is a terrible thing to have. Brain, a mind is a great thing not to waste. Hate is a terrible thing to have. It's terrible. It's horrible. As we proceed, people.
Under his administration. So in many ways, even though Dickman had this sort of strained history, right? I mean, to sort of secure the Black vote, which is really important in St. Louis. I mean, he really sort of put his efforts to building this hospital. You also had the governor, you had state representatives. And again, this also sort of embodies a sort of a New Deal moment, right? You had these sort of, the Public Works Administration, the Works Progress Administration were deeply involved in helping to fund and construct this hospital. So the infusion of that money allowed it to really become one of the biggest Black hospitals in the nation, to be quite frank.
Well, Homer G. Phillips was very close to me because my father was in the first group of interns that trained at Homer G. Phillips. The story goes that in 1937, when the hospital was built, my father graduated from Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, and he and 27 of his fellow classmates were on their way to Kansas City to intern at Kansas City General. They had to change trains in St. Louis. And while they were in the train station, a red cap, which was the colored porters that put bags on the train, asked them where they were going. They said, well, we're going to Kansas City. He said, well, they just built a colored hospital here and they don't have any doctors. So they went out in a taxi and checked at the hospital, and they all decided to stay since they weren't paying but $10 a month, clothes and room and board, and that was the same thing that was going on in Kansas City. So they became the first 27 interns at Homer G. Phillips.
This was large. This Homer G. Phillips wasn't just a hospital. It was going to be one of the greatest African-American hospitals in the country. We had Hubbard Hospital and we had Howard Hospital, and there were smaller hospitals, but nothing of this stature had ever been conceptualized or built for the African-American community. And so this was a huge undertaking. I think that just really was illustration of Homer G. Phillips, the attorney, of his broader vision, that he was going to create this momentous, remarkable hospital, which was going to be the training program for at least a third of all African American physicians between 1937 and 1979. Just a remarkable feat in itself.
Then we had a nurses program, nursing school, and there's a tunnel that goes from the nursing school all the way to the hospital where you didn't have to go outside.
And because of
Even then, people, them have tunnel underground. Just saying. And just everything connected together. Boy, I'm not telling you, say, people, listening to them story, I'm tell you, say, the greatness doesn't end. As we proceed.
it was so special, they built the main hospital, a nursing home, and a power plant, and also interns quarters. The nursing home was built for 148 nurses, and the interns quarters housed, I think it was 28 interns. The hospital was built to take care of 635 beds, which was really something. It was one of the largest hospitals in the country at the time.
Again, although the Ville was there beforehand, Homer G. Phillips really put his stamp, his imprimatur on the Ville, and the two really were just indistinguishable. They were, Homer G. was the Ville, and the Ville was Homer G.
So by the time of the hospital's dedication, the hospital was named Homer G. Phillips Hospital. And the dedication ceremony, sort of one of the last items on the program, was that city officials handed the keys of the hospital to the hospital's medical director, Henry Hampton, who was the first African-American medical director of the hospital.
This is at the time, of course, now when during rigid segregation in large parts of the country, and this fallacy that African-Americans could not run a hospital. African-American doctors could not deliver care of the quality of white physicians. African-American nurses could not deliver care the way white nurses could. And so Henry Hampton had this knowledge, and he had every desire to break that stereotype, to produce a hospital which was going to be of the highest quality, having the highest volume, and really creating innovation, which will be adopted by white hospitals. In the first year, from 1937 to 1938, they had over 100,000 patients visit. Now, the Ville neighborhood is relatively small, as you can imagine. So you can see this is drawing patients from a large catchment area. And Henry Hampton said, when they walk through this door, America's eyes are on us. We're going to show that we can do this and do this extraordinarily well. And this is what Henry Hampton wanted. This was his legacy. He wanted people to remember this as a phenomenally great hospital, not a phenomenally great Black hospital, but a great hospital, period.
Then Dr. William Sinclair took over, who was a sort of prolific figure in the history of the hospital, and really sort of not only sort of had a hand in sort of making sure that the hospital itself ran smoothly, but also really helped to develop the internship and residency programs.
And it was through the program that he set up that the knowledge it came from Sinclair and his know-how and what have you to all of the modalities of general surgery. And I was privileged to have scrubbed with him and on several occasions. In doing so, you watch his technique, how he approached the problem, what he did with the problem, and the outcome that he had. And all of it was very, very admirable.
You know, he was a surgeon, and I was a patient, and we were on.
People. These are people who are still alive, right? And they were there. Okay, so may I write off some of the I am writing off some of the people them that was part of it. So later on, we can do like a research on these people, because you see, them people did great, you know. These people were great.
of safety. And I was repeating, and we were on the 5th floor, and they on the 2nd or 3rd floor, I think. And of course he had his office. And usually you didn't see him unless you were getting called on the carpet. And fortunately, I never had to.
So Dr. William A. Sinclair was a classmate of my father at Howard University, so they knew each other well. He was small in stature. He was about 5'6", and they called him Little Willie because he was so short. And he had to step up on a stool when he operated, but Dr. Sinclair was a whiz at surgery. So because of the poor care that they had down south, one of the pharmacists down there, Dr. Pierce, asked Dr. Sinclair would he come down and operate on some poorly taken care of patients in Monroe. So because it was a Catholic hospital and because it was segregated, they wouldn't take or operate on any patients in Monroe that were Black. So Dr. Sinclair and Dr. Vaughn went down to Monroe, Louisiana to operate on these patients that had been selected for them. So when they get to Monroe, they had to change the clothes in the janitor's closet. So when they went in the operating room, since they had several patients, some of the patients needed more than one operation to be done. One particular lady needed a hysterectomy and a gallbladder taken out, which is unusual to do at the same time. So you expect the operation to take a long time. The white doctors in the community had gathered around the table to watch these doctors operate. And because they had to be operating pretty quickly, they were just whizzing along. And one of the white doctors just couldn't contain himself and say, "Ooh, wait, look at these little niggas go." And so that was a story that just went around the hospital, and everybody just laughed about how fast Dr. Sickler was.
When you think of the legion of African American physicians, from James Whitaker to LaSalle Lafall, who became president, the first African American president of the American Cancer Society, were world renowned, and they were here at Homer G because there was this a sense of greater purpose. We had to get the best to train the best.
There were only 3 places in the United States where Negro doctors can get a qualified internship, and those 3 places were Howard University in Washington, D.C., Harvard Medical College, then came Homer Phillips Hospital, and I was fortunate enough to be accepted.
One of my favorite stories was James Whitaker came to complete his internship at Homer G. Phillips. And so he said when he drove his car in, he looked up and he saw the hospital, and he said,
I couldn't believe it. I never had seen a structure that magnificent, that large, and that new.
I'm Kiana, and I
impressive people. Impressive. So people me tell me said all of them information that I'm going through, right? There's so much doctors that's that pass through. It's like we can't write fast enough. So I'm gonna go look up James Whitaker and the doctor, the first doctor and the cancer medical staff. People, these are some great people, you know. This is our history. This is our story. As we proceed, people.
And it new. And so I paused and just sat there and looked at this beautiful hospital. And I was just carried away with this great structure that I had never seen anything like it before in my life.
Everyone who walked in had that same feeling. It really was breathtaking, the way it was structured, the beauty of this hospital. And people wanted to be here.
My sister, my daughter's aunt, was a pediatrician. She was the first. And she also trained at Homer Phillips Hospital. And she was the main reason I came.
Dr. Helen Nash was a very strong woman, physician, pediatrician here in St. Louis. Well known, very competent.
My Aunt Helen, her time spent at Homer Phillips Hospital, she was one of few women residents there at the hospital. And I think in her internship class, maybe she was one of 5 or 6 women. And she then did a residency in pediatrics there. And one of her big interests was in the care of premature infants. And she did a lot to improve the conditions in the nursery at Homer Phillips Hospital to have them kind of up to the standard of nurseries, in other hospitals across the country.
I was on pediatrics with Dr. Helen Nash, and as stated before, everybody was afraid of her, but she was excellent. I was feeding a baby laying on his back, and she walked in and she told me I was drowning the baby. I have never fed a baby laying flat on its back again. I always sit it up straight, and that I will never forget that.
Well, everybody came to Homer G. It was one of the best places. They took the largest number of interns, and you could be sure of getting a residency, pediatrics. That was what I wanted to do. And so the major thing was to get accepted here.
One of the most qualified women to finish from Homer G. Phillips was Helen Nash, who was a pediatrician. She and her brother Homer both ran a practice of pediatrics for at least 50 years in the city of St. Louis. She was one of the first Blacks to be on the staff of pediatrics at St. Louis University, took care of the indigent in St. Louis for years. And to this day, I think she was one of the best pediatricians that I ever worked with. Being an obstetrician, I delivered the babies that she took care of.
So Helen Nash was a force of nature. She was a force of nature because she had a chip on her shoulder. Her father said, "Helen, I don't want you to be a doctor. I want you to do something in the arts." And she said, "Wait a minute. I'm a girl, and you don't want me to be a doctor because I'm a female." She says, "I'm not going to buy that." And so she said, "No, I'm going to be a doctor whether you want me to be a doctor or not." And so she carried that. She had something to prove to herself, in a misogynistic society. She's going to show that she's not going to be just a doctor, but the doctor.
Helen Nash is a legend in this community. I mean, I think she represented maybe 2nd or 3rd generation. Her brother, her niece, her dad were physicians, and everybody who knows her career holds her in the highest esteem. She was a great pioneer. She's one of several who practiced medicine at a very high level and was welcomed into the more broad stream of academic medicine.
So Helen had a reputation for being really, really feisty and really.
What does feisty mean, people? Huh? What does feisty mean? I'm telling us that this strength where ladies have, it's so amazing. There's no way mother want to try to decipher on the strength, because the things we want to do, man can do. Right? Man, if you just appreciate the fact that women are so amazing. Right, people? Shout out to the mothers them again. I'm telling you, said the highlighted of ladies, it's right through history, the strength we have. As we proceed.
I used to say, she didn't take any prisoners. But what I meant by that was that she was, it was her way, and she stood up for what she believed was right. And she was not going to let anyone tell her she couldn't do what she knew she was capable of or should be allowed to do, that sort of thing.
She was incredibly good with her patients, her small patients, the babies, and with the family members. The things that she did in order to improve maternal-child health.
Infant mortality rate, morbidity and mortality rates were very high for infants all over the country. And the premature infants at Homer Phillips, because there was no set up preemie unit at the time, had a death rate above 80%.
And she noticed that, well, why are all these babies, in the same bed, same crib, when one's sneezing and one has, could have the croup? We should have separate bassinets for these kids, for these babies. Now, you would say that, well, that's pretty, obvious. That's nothing.
That much I assure you. Sometimes it's just common sense, people. Some of it's not complicated. I always say small complication cause mass chaos. Small complication cause mass chaos. In every sense of the way. But sometimes, it makes sense. Instead of we try to make stupid things make sense. All of them things are nowadays, people, trust me, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. But sometimes it's just common sense. As we proceed, people.
Obvious. There's nothing sophisticated about that. That was a novel concept. And she did something simple as to have individual bassinets. The infection rates plummeted.
Because of the groundwork she laid, because she had done so well, it made it easier for me to come, because I did not have to prove things that she had already proven. And they just sort of expected,
You see why it's so important for us to set good example, people? Because no matter what, somebody is gonna see it. Somebody's gonna hear it. As we proceed, people, because I tell us, this is one of the one that mama say it's a women. You look on this and you say, okay, so the hospital is named after the doctor, right? And he's a male. But the hero actually are the ladies, the nurses who actually work there. As we proceed, people. And his name is Dr. Homer G. Phillips.
And they just sort of expected, this is another person doing the same thing. And she was, of course, a teacher and a mentor.
One of the things that was really important for Helen is that her patients were treated well.
I went to the dietitian and I asked the dietitian, who had gotten to be a friend of mine, why we never had ice cream and we never had bananas. And she said, I'll show you the grocery list that came from downtown. And ice cream and bananas were marked by City Hospital only, the White Hospital. I went to the medical director and to the superintendent, who was McKnight. The medical director was Dr. Sinkler. I said, can you imagine that children on my ward can't have ice cream because they're black? He would say, Miss Helen, here you go again. I said, you have to have ice cream and bananas if you want to look right. Then they started to alternate. Then they caused so much ruckus that they just said, everybody have ice cream every day you want. Just forget it.
Hello. But she made up her mind that you couldn't change it.
She was the first African-American female to join the staff at Washington University at Children's Hospital.
I was in the newborn unit, scrubbed up in cap and gown and getting ready to go in the newborn unit to look at a baby. And this nurse came in and said, "Oh, you're getting ready to examine your grandbaby." I said, "You know very well that I'm Dr. Nash, and I'm not examining any goddamn grandbaby." She got red and left. As she came back later and said, "I'm really sorry. I know very well that you are Dr. Nash." I said, "But you won't forget it now. No. Next time you see a black doctor doing something, you won't do that."
Honestly, we were always brothers and sisters, but professionally, we would have been fighting.
Dr. Howard Venable is another great example. He was a very well recognized African American ophthalmologist. Many of these people really became leaders in their medical fields, not just among Black physicians, but among all physicians, right?
Not just amongst Black physicians, but amongst all physicians. So it's not just being great amongst your own. It's being great amongst all. That's always been the standard for us people. That's always been the standard. As we proceed, people.
All physicians, right? So to have sort of, high positions in the National Medical Association, the Black analog of the American Medical Association, to have high-ranking positions in the American Medical Association, to be widely regarded in their specialty fields is quite impressive. I don't think you will find that sort of, sort of storied cohort of alumni from any other Black hospital, really.
I look at the Homer G. Phillips story, and it reminds me of the Tuskegee Airmen. Think about that. You're telling someone that they can't do it, they can't be a fighter pilot, that they can't compete. Well, the women and the men of color who walked through Homer G. Phillips Hospital were my Tuskegee Airmen. They said, "Okay, world, take a look at this. Okay, take a snapshot, because you're not gonna."
Take a snapshot of our greatness, of our unlimited ability. Take a snapshot, please. Take a snapshot. People. That barrier, that mental barrier that people have, because it's a mental barrier. It honestly is a mental barrier. If you say just because you are this size, you can lift this. You are the one with the mental barrier, people. How you can look on a person and say a person can't do something just because you can't do it. Take that world, take that world, take that world. We're this great. As we proceed, people.
This is going to be something we're going to blow your socks off. We're going to show you how it should be done.
This is how we do it.
People. The one them figure all a piece of Montel Jordan in it, brethren, for sure. And I said, this is really how we do it.
Because it was a magnet for talent. People took great pride and they wanted to be the best. And they felt proud by being here. And they still kept in touch with each other long after they left. Many of them stayed in St. Louis. Many of the doctors I grew up knowing, I became friends with them in later life. They stayed here.
My history with Homer G. Phillips goes all the way back to infancy because I grew up only a block and a half away from the hospital, and it was the main hospital in the city. In 1958, when I graduated, the white hospitals had opened up, and I applied for an internship at Pontiac General Hospital in Pontiac, Michigan. Went there for a year, and I was going to take a residency in pathology, and I got to thinking that I wanted to do something to help people. I didn't want to have dead people as patients. And
I didn't want to have dead people as patients. I rather promote life. People tell us say, oh, people used to be genuine, you know. People used to be real. It's become so complicated now that people can't live life. People are not living life because them get caught up in this. I don't know. But I say it becomes, to me, it becomes a loop now. Then people add causes, them have goals, dreams and aspiration. Now people just want to get money, 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 money. The main objective is money, 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 money. That's all you hear people talk about. Not changing anything. As we proceed, people. At Sunday, it's cold outside, but it's warm in here. Right, people? It's not freezing, but it's cold outside. As we proceed.
And I thought maybe there was no technology, and I thought maybe I need to get into a field where I could do something. I mean, I just not stand around and watch people die because we didn't know what the diagnosis was.
Yes, people did really care about life. People take them jobs seriously. Right? People used to look upon people, respect. Even then, the key thing was always respect. But now the key thing is disrespect. That part I just don't understand. As we proceed.
I could do something. I mean, I just not stand around and watch people die because we didn't know what the diagnosis was. I called my mother and asked her if she would call her brother, Dr. Gakins, and if he would call Dr. Sinkler, Dr. William Sinkler, who was the head of surgery at Homer Phillips. And here, July 1st at 9 o'clock in uniform, ready to go to work.
You felt immediately that you could relate to the individual that was there, regardless of their stature. And the hospital was staffed completely, that is, in the medical aspect and in the business aspect, by blacks. So you did. You felt quite at home. I think a feeling like that is conducive to learning.
The internship at the time consisted of was called a rotating internship, in which you had to spend like 3 months on surgery, 3 months on medicine, 2 months on OBGYN, and then you had like maybe 1 month of elective like urology or ear, nose, and throat, and maybe pathology. So on my
So in the hospital you get to do a little bit of everything. 3 months here, so 3 months there, so 3 months. So it's not, you're not just specializing in one thing. So if any emergency or anything like that, you at least, you know. But I love the fact that this is how it used to be, you know. Now, me don't know if you do that. Oh, that's not my job. Oh, it's so different. Or people used to cooperate, the unity. As we proceed, people.
pathology. So on my 3 months of surgery, I think I learned more surgery than most people learn around the country.
Dr. Sinkler was medical director at that time, and he had come to Howard University and met with students who may be interested. And he told us if we wanted to come there, he would guarantee us that we would have a position. That's why I came to Homer Phillips, although I had known about it, but there were no women doctors of any race in my town. So I didn't think that way. I went to Howard to major in home economics, foods and nutrition, not medicine. But I think I was leaning that way.
So I came to Homer Phillips Hospital, and the dental program was a relatively minor program there. But my own education there was assisted very much by the young physicians in training. So when I came there, I was in my 20s, as were most of the other young people. But St. Louis at that time was a much more vibrant city than it is today. And of course, the time I spent at Homer Phillips Hospital meant that I knew people about my age from around the country, as far west as California, as south as Louisiana, North Carolina. They all came here to train in surgical specialties. I spent 2 years in St. Louis, and then I went to the military. I had an obligation.
I served in the Navy in World War II, and I went in, I think it was 1944, the height of the war. The war was really going on strong at that time. And they were drafting everyone that would turn 18 years of age. So I turned 18 and did not get to go to my prom because I received a letter in the mailbox saying, "Greetings, and you're to come and have an examination." Went up to Chicago, Illinois, and had the examination. And when I got back, I had my induction notice in the mailbox. It was that quick.
After my internship from 1963 to 64, I started my residency July the 1st of 1964. I'll make sure I get these dates correct. Then I was interrupted. I was drafted in 1966. I came back in 68 and finished in 69.
January of 1967, it was cold. It was about 10 below zero. And my wife called me and said, "You got a strange letter here. I don't know what it means." I said, "Well, open it up." And she says, "It's from the United States government." And it says, "Greetings from the President of the United States." That was how they drafted you back in the days. And so I got
Greetings from the United States. You ready? Let's go. I could go our next country, go deal with people where you don't know. Eh? Why? As we proceed, people.
Mario was my son. He was almost 4. And we adjusted to it. I went.
I didn't want to choose medicine. I preferred chemistry. I wanted to be a chemist, but they would not hire any black chemists. I had the top honors in chemistry at Harvard University. So I noticed that the fellows who went to medical school were not going to Korea. Yeah. So I said, well, I guess I better go down there then. I don't want to go in military as a private. I was chief surgery in Korea, Ozan, Korea. One of the most significant things that I accomplished was integrating the Air Force Hospital with the Koreans who would get hurt around, and they wouldn't let them, we could not admit them, but I did admit one. And the colonel came to me and said I couldn't do that. And so I told him what reasons I had. No point in sending him out to die when we could take care of him. And he told me, so with Jackson, you guys vote tonight. And if y'all decide treat these here Koreans, I'm not gonna stand in your way. So that night we all draftees, basically, and we voted to admit the Koreans.
So my dad was in medical school during World War II, during the draft for World War II. And during that time, they allowed him to join the service and continue with medical school. So he spent his time in medical school in his last year of medical school as part of being in the Army. After that, he completed his medical training, completed his residency, spent a year in Chicago. Then during the Korean War, that he was called back into military service. And that was quite a disruptive event for him. Fortunately for him, they sent him to a pediatric hospital in Würzburg, where he met our mother, who was working as a nurse there in the wards. And they were married in Germany, and then came back and took up his practice, and they worked together to reestablish his practice in Los Angeles.
Well, during my residency, I became friends with quite a few. I remember Some more than others, of course. Earl Robinson, Oliver Page, McDonald. We were all residents. Some of us were in different fields.
Yeah, we met when we were young kids at
At a YMCA camp.
at Camp Rivercliff. So it turned out that I loved camp. He couldn't stand it because he always wanted to eat, and he went home to his mom after 10 days.
No, they wouldn't come and get me now.
They wouldn't come.
I called every day. They let you make one phone call a day, and I called home asking them to come and get me, and they wouldn't do it.
So this is how we first hooked up. And then years passed and we didn't see each other. And then we came back as friends later on to Homer G. Phillips.
Now, I remember Dr. Robinson and Dr. McDonald because, as I had said before, we did a rotating internship. So I spent, I guess, 4 months on surgery, 2 months on female surgery, 2 months on male surgery. And we were, of course, interns and they were the residents. So we were all the first line to draw the blood, take the history, write up everything, as they used to call it, the quote, scut work, and get the patients ready for the residents. And I can remember Dr. McDonald and I at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night or early Sunday morning, we were trying to put a 300-pound man on a slab so we could do an arteriogram. And he was just about as small as I. But I think we finally got it done. It took about 3 hours because the patient would not help us because he was shot by the police, so he wasn't doing a thing.
We had a poker game that we would play on the 5th floor, and we'd get paid, I think, the first of the month. And about 3 days after that, all the money was gone, so we would couldn't put any money in the pot, and we would play what we called on the finger.
So the poker game ran on Fridays, a payday, till the money ran out. It may run for 3 or 4 hours, or it may run all the way to Saturday. And then we started playing on credit, we call betting on the finger, where I owe this money. I bet you $50, I raise you $100 on the finger. I ain't got $100, but it'll be in the pot later on.
We would keep record of the fingers in the pot, and then we'd have to settle up when the next payday came.
There were several bars around there that we would frequent. I remember one called the Knotty Pine. We'd go there early in the morning sometime. We finished round.
Because as soon as we left work, we went to a bar. We had our favorite hangouts. Sorrento, the Pine Knot. What was that other place we hang out?
The funny thing about them people have a good memory. Them people remember them history, right? Them remember where them grew up with in a them situation there, because I'm telling you, them situation there was like in the trenches. From segregation to Jim Crow law. It's all of them things that it's always to keep us in our one position where we can't excel. But every position, everything where them create, we surpass everything as we proceed, people.
Another place we hang out, Ruby's Zodiac Lounge.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Over in East St. Louis, all the clubs, the Palace Club, the Manhattan.
Yes, I do know Dr. Harold Robinson Jr. He is an obstetrician gynecologist too. He was well ahead of me. I think he was probably 6 to 8 years ahead of me, but I knew him. And the reason I knew him, I came here originally as a research assistant at Washington University, but I lived in the dormitory over here. And the people in OBGYN found out that I was interested. And so they would invite me down and I would do a delivery under, their watchful eyes. And that's how I met him and the residents on his level.
The difference in working at a white hospital and a black hospital like Homer G. Phillips Hospital was like dying and going to heaven. That was the difference. And it was a lot. It was hard work, though. I mean, we worked extremely hard, but that was a good thing because we developed a good work ethic.
Washington University.
You see, work ethic. Hard work give you work ethic. See? I'm telling you, all the things that what we used to do for uplift our race. It was just the simple things then. People. I just love them stories. I just love these story because you see, it shows like companionship, friendship, the true aspect of them things there. Not nowadays friendship. Them people are still friendly enough. Them people are still talk to each other. As we proceed, people.
Was the university affiliate that gave us accreditation to have a residency. So all departments had the Great White Father. They were like, they knew everything. One time, Dr. Monad, who was our Great White Father, had examined this patient and said the patient had an ovarian cyst. We said, no, the patient got ascites, which means a whole bunch of fluid in the abdomen. So Dr. Smiley said, well, we need to wait and just drain it. So Dr. Monad said, we got to take the patient to surgery. Patient's abdomen is like, look like she's 9 months pregnant. Dr. Monad's going to do the operation, because he's going to prove to us colored people that we didn't know what we're doing. So knife cuts down, open her up. When he tapped the perineum, fluid squirted up to the light. It was about 6,000 cc's. That's like 4 gallons of fluid. So he was chagrined because Smiley was right. We're back in the back. We just cracked it up.
Enough time we see that happen to chef who thinks that they know everything and then the end result is what we know. Because nobody knows everything. Nobody don't know everything. So this man, the great overseers, them always are come around and I said this and I said this and then they end up being wrong. As we proceed, people, always the same. The past, the present, and the future. Unless we change it.
We're back in the back. We just crack it up. But see, those are the kind of things, games we play,
During the discussions, particularly around the nurses. I mean, the physicians are fine, but when we talk about the nurses, what's really remarkable is the fact that they were driving a lot of what was going on in the hospital. Now, they don't want to say that openly, but they really were just remarkable driving force. I heard all the backstories about what goes on in the OR and who really was moving things along, and it's just almost like the hidden figures story. That really appealed to me. Just hearing about those figures that drove the excellence of the hospital.
I also think one thing that's very important about the hospital is that it acted as an engine of change for many of these nurses and doctors, that many people had come from very poor backgrounds. There were people who came from the rural South who'd never left their communities, but they somehow found the means to leave their homes, take a train or a bus, take this journey to St. Louis and start a new life. And by the time they finished the nursing program or their residency, they were part of the middle class.
The way I learned about Homer Phillips in the School of Nursing, while I was a junior in high school, I saw a brochure with information about Homer Phillips, and it was in color, and the young ladies were in those beautiful uniforms. It was the most beautiful thing I'd seen. And I had always enjoyed taking care of things. So I said, that's for me. And Miss Minnie E. Gore was the director of nursing then, so she accepted me. So September of 1952, I ended up here in St. Louis at Homer G. Phillips Hospital School of Nursing.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan. How I became acquainted with Homer G. Phillips was that the nurses came to my mother's home when my sisters were born. And so I watched their performance of nursing care.
People, she looked the same, she's still so joyful, so beautiful seeing with your people. And that much I showed. Oh my goodness. She's still perky, still energetic, seeing with your people. I'm telling you, say them people, yeah, they struggle with them go through. Upon her smile, man. I'm blue too, people. Our outfit are blue.
And I knew they were home folks nurses.
My sister was able to pick up KMOX in Monroe late at night, and she would hear about the legacy of Homer Phillips Hospital, and I always wanted to be a nurse. And there was a Homer Phillips graduate and a Homer Phillips doctor who had trained here, a couple of them that lived in my city. And Harriet Foster, who's a Homer Phillips graduate, encouraged my parents to allow me to come to Homer Phillips. And we were even featured in a book called The Warmth of Other Suns.
I am from Jackson, Tennessee, and I have family members who were employed here. And we did not have a hospital for Black people in Jackson. And I came to St. Louis as a child, and had my tonsils removed at Homer Phillips Hospital.
I'm from Vicksburg, Mississippi. When I graduated from high school in 1963, Mercy Hospital there had a nursing school, but they did not accept.
Okay, people, all you hear them people that did have hair upon them head. Them people have real hair upon them head, you know. The amount of hair them did have upon them head. Oh my goodness, people. I must say all of the chemical what we use nowadays in our ear, you know. Make people head so bad nowadays. Come tell us that look upon them people are beautiful here.
And I was scheduled to attend St. Mary's College in St. Mary's, Kansas, and all set to go. And one day in the early spring, I walked through the principal's office and I saw that brochure from Homer Phillips. And I said, well, you know, may I have this? And of course, it was okay with her. And I, you know, read the whole book and that was it.
I lived about 5 miles north from Homer G. Phillips. I always felt I wanted to help people, but my parents really helped me and inspired me to realize that dream. So not only was I born here, but several of my other family members, and then my daughter and my mother as well worked here. As I know you know her as on 1 North, which was the medical floor.
I was born here in St. Louis, and my aunt, her name's Estelle Massey, was a nurse here, and I wanted to emulate her. And my dad didn't talk to me. He wanted me to be a nurse, I think, because she was one.
I'm from Evansville, Indiana, and back in the 50s, there were only 2 schools accepting African American students, and Homer G. Phillips was one, and that's how I ended up at Homer G. Phillips. Plus, I was in the Future Nurses Club in my high school, and the nurse's name was Jackson, and my maiden name is Jackson, and I wanted to be just like her. So that's being a nurse.
I lived 4 or 5 blocks from Homer Phillips as a child. I recall many nights as a young kid being taken to Homer G. Phillips Hospital for one ailment or another. I always, even as a young child, remember wanting to take care and heal people. So nursing has always been in my blood. And Homer G. Phillips was right in my neighborhood. I was so very proud to see the students with their uniforms and their white caps.
People, I'm telling you, so what you want? Uniform, and time we put on uniform, we look good in anything and everything. We look good in anything and everything. We make anything look good. Oh, people. As we proceed.
Born here in St. Louis, and I lived in the Ville, so we were in walking distance. I had 6 family members that worked at Homer G. Phillips. So family was full of medicine, and that was always my desire to be in medicine. So.
And I was born in Memphis, and there was a nursing school there, and E.H. Crump, I applied there. They only took Caucasians. And so I was not accepted. A lady in church told us about St. Louis and Homer G. Phillips. So all 5 kids got in the back seat. I was accepted, and my parents drove us up here and put us in the hands of the people of Homer G. Phillips, and it was quite a reward.
I remember Homer Phillips about the age of 10 or 11.
because I had asthma. And I spent so many nights at this hospital and so many days, weeks, admitted to the pediatric floor. They didn't think I would graduate high school because I had to have teachers to come tutor me in the hospital. Fortunately, I did graduate and I went to nursing school, graduated, and came back to Homer Phillips to work in that same emergency room with the same nurses that took care of me. And it was just an awesome feeling.
When I arrived at Phillips, I was met by an upperclassman, and she was my mentor, and she continued to be my friend throughout nursing. She was just like an advisor to sort of keep country girls straight, you know, to learn the rules, regulations, show me something about the city, show me around the hospital, because it was a big place for me. Rules, regulations, you know, things to do to have fun and things to do to stay out of trouble, and a few things to get in trouble.
Our instructors were excellent. They would not accept anything but excellence from us. You had to excel to be a Homer G. Phillips nurse. You could not just walk out in your uniform and cap. You could not go down to Billy Burke's, as you heard me talk about Billy Burke's, in your uniform and cap. You could not go down to the Moon Room, Blue Room in your uniform and cap. So we were taught those high standards.
Okay, and that's the thing though. When you're in your uniform, you're supposed to represent the uniform, like how your uniform represent the company. You always represent yourself first. All of them things are so important, you know. I'm gonna tell you, say it's not the big things, them, you know, or the small things, them. As we proceed, people.
Nursing and how to be a nurse in the community and take care of patients and be well respected.
One of the beautiful things about the training that we received as nurses at Homer Phillips was we were taught to be an all-round person. We went to the ball games, we went to the opera, we went to the symphony, we went to churches of various denominations, because the feeling was that to be a good nurse, you need to be a rounded person. And we were exposed to all of that. And I really appreciate it. It has made me a better person.
Our director of nurses made an appointment to go to Famous Bar. There was a costume room, a couture room, in some of these, like Bloomingdale and those kinds of stores. Well, Famous Bar had a costume room. We were taken to the costume room to get our shoes. We were fitted, specially made by an individual. We were taken down there on a bus, and each one of us individually would get measured for our shoes. We wore the high heel granny shoes, long, pointing towards the ceiling with silk.
The high heel granny shoes. What me say, it was uniformity. Everybody looks, you know? Boy. Greatness, people. Greatness within us.
Things. And they had to be clean and straightened in your shoes. They could not be twisted. Those high heel shoes were the most comfortable shoes. That heel. And we called them mother comforts. We called them mother comforts, but they saved our feet. You see, she wanted us to have the best. We always had the best. Even when we had to fight for it, they fought for us to get the best, or else we would settle for anything less.
There was Dr. Smiley, our OBGYN man. best OBGYN doctor I've ever seen. We used to laugh in the operating room. He hummed all the time.
Molly, who was an OBGYN, pride himself, as the doctors all said, and he never said it, even though he taught us OBGYN, that he could take out a hysterectomy. He'd do a hysterectomy in 20 minutes. And then when you talk to those operating room nurses, he was whistling the whole time and doing his surgery. And in 20 minutes, the uterus was out, tumor and everything else going to the pathology lab. That was Dr. Smiley.
Yeah, and he only.
When you love what you do, man. Oh, people. When you love what you're doing, it's so much fun. You get one joy out of being good at what you do. And it's not a competition with no other people. And many people feel that way, that it has to be a competition outside yourself. There is no competition outside myself, because there's enough competition within myself to keep me busy. When you have certain goals, man, it's amazing when you try to reach it and you attain it. Speak, great, wise, beautiful ladies. Speak, heroes, sheroes.
Tumor and everything else going to the pathology lab. That was Dr. Smiley.
Yeah, and he only used, 3 instruments: a hemostat, scissors, medicine bond scissors, and the needle holder.
Yeah.
I mean, he kept the scissors on his finger, and he would flip them around. He would suture, tie, cut, and use one sponge, so you didn't have to worry about losing sponges in patients at that time.
I fling big stone, because say all them fine people have equipment leave inside of them after the operation. Them have to have a next operation. So I tell you, say how precise we are, efficient. All of them things there, all of those things, it's in us. It's that don't come outside of it. That come from inside of it. And the opportunity are the biggest thing. That's outside. As we proceed.
He was really good. He was really fast.
And he didn't ask you for his instruments. You were supposed to know. And we did.
The other thing we had to learn, the anticipation of what the doctor is going to need. So therefore your instruments were placed in that order. He's going to need his scalpel first to make the incision. Secondly, he's going to need some clamps, or forceps as we call them, to clamp off the blood vessels. You may need your retractors to pull back the muscles. Then you're going to need, certainly ready to suture up after removing it with the scissors and all. You're going to need your black silk or your catgut, your scissors, your needle and thread.
We were taught nursing was a career. I believe now, as observation, that nursing is a job and it makes a difference.
Most members of St. Louis community are aware of the School of Nursing here. They are aware that doctors trained here as interns and residents, but there were also 3 other schools for students. One was the School for Medical Technologists, one was the School for X-ray Technicians, and the third was the School for Medical Record Librarians. That is the school that I attended for medical record librarians. I was one of those African-American babies born in Homer Phillips during the time of segregated healthcare. And I became aware of the school and the profession through our family physician, who was Dr. Julius Sherrod. He was also on the staff at Homer Phillips and very proud and supportive of his wife, Esther Sherrod, who was the founder of the School for Medical Record Librarians at Homer Phillips. Medical record librarians today, that title does not exist. They're called healthcare managers, and it reflects the digital age we currently live in. But when I was a student, this is what we were called, medical record librarians, and this was our Bible. This is a manual. Students throughout the United States use this same textbook along with other textbooks.
Of course, of course, of course. People, you think so them are gonna give credit along with other textbooks? Do you really need the other textbooks? Yes, yes, we insist. So we can sell more textbooks. And we can also make them look important, like the most important book. As we proceed, people.
This was what taught us how our jobs should be done.
I think Homer G. Phillips really achieved its highest point, ironically, I guess, just before desegregation occurred, because there were so many fabulously talented residents who wanted to come here, as these people came to have other opportunities in the United States. Not as many super talented people came to Homer G. Phillips Hospital.
It started as early as 1945, right, with the Hill-Burton Act, showing really putting hospitals on notice that they could not actively discriminate. But yeah, by the 1960s, we really just start seeing the inability to recruit the top-notch surgeons of William Sinkler and James Whitaco and Dr. Robinson.
When we talked about the closing of Homer G, there was rumors for a number of years because they said the city wanted to get out of the hospital business. And so when it finally came down, I think Homer G. Phillips was chosen over the city because the mayor felt it was the easier thing to do. He would get less drawback from the white community by closing Homer G. Phillips.
Well, Homer Phillips was on the closing block from the time I came. Every year it would come that the hospital was going to be closed. And by the 70s, into the mid-70s, it had become more of an issue. That we were having meetings with Washington University, and they had told us that, well, we are training more Black physicians than you are, because most of your physicians now are foreign born.
If you look at the list of where the residents came from early on and compare that to a list of where they came from much later in the life of the hospital, you look down the list and at the beginning it says Meharry, 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 Meharry. And if you look later on, it's Guatemala, it's Mexico. A lot of people were coming from overseas at that point. Some people felt too that the city had deliberately been pouring resources into other hospitals, the Caucasian hospitals, and that they had been starving Homer G. Phillips of some of the new equipment, some of the technology that they needed to do well.
Homer G. Phillips Hospital had been a major flashpoint in the struggles of African Americans in this community. In 1973-74, it was the usual kind of community agitation to save the hospital. The major fight, the biggest fight, was about electing a Black comptroller. And a Black comptroller was elected. His name was John Bass. And as a comptroller, he has the power and the authority to judge it. So because we had an African American in there from 1973 to 1977, Homer G. Phillips was essentially safe. John Bass was defeated in March of 1977. The new comptroller that came in, his name was Raymond Persich. He came in on the promise, along with the mayor of the city then, Mayor Conway, that they were going to close Homer G. Phillips Hospital.
Everybody knows what that was all about. The National Health Plan was on the drawing board.
and everybody would be a paying customer. It was the same way when I was a kid before food stamps. There was little small confectionaries all through our neighborhood. The big stores let you know if you don't have any money, don't come here. The little confectionaries will put it on the book. And when you get some money, we'll sign it. But when food stamps hit, immediately the stores that didn't welcome us put the big signs up. Welcome food stamps. And that's
I'll tell you the intricacy of everything. So the liquor store them not take food stamp. The big store them now take food stamp and take the little money them out of the little people them shop straight in at the big shop. And the same thing up now. That's the same thing. Target, Walmart, shut down all of the liquor store them. Because now people get this. I have to shop in these big places. History is our story. Daily. Proceed.
And as a result of it, a lot of the little bitty stores shut down. Well, the same thing with the National Health Plan.
In 1977, when all of us got involved in the effort to save the comptroller's position and John Bass was defeated, the whole community from that point on became an intense upheaval in order to save this hospital.
Every activist, from all corners, came together. And so that's how, I met Wale Amuse when he became involved in the struggle to save Homer G. Phillips Hospital. We formed the ad hoc committee to save Homer G. Phillips Hospital and all public hospitals.
Hey, Devin, how's it going?
Ah, boy, I'm going to tell you, say, when them done have them for them mind set up, say, this has to go, that has to go, people. It's sad, But when we can make decision for ourselves, and the decision we make, it's not even worth anything. It doesn't matter. The only way I can do is vote. It not change people. It doesn't change. As we proceed.
Committee to save Homer G. Phillips Hospital and all public hospitals.
The radio disc jockey, as we were known at the time, personality disc jockeys, were very involved in every aspect of our community. Most of the people that I spoke with around Homer G. Phillips Hospital were ad hoc committees. They would form committees themselves to save the hospital, and they used my program as a forum, as a voice to communicate to the community and to tell them what was happening, to tell them where the meetings were, tell them why it was necessary for you to come to the meetings if they wanted to keep it open, and they did.
We
and they did.
got involved when they were talking about closing the hospitals. They were going to close both hospitals, but they knew that the biggest fight was going to come from this hospital. So the thing is, don't close number one first and allow the people at Homer Phillips to dig in the trenches and really give you a fight. Let's go at the big fight first. And if we're able to get Homer Phillips closed, when it comes time to close number one, we can close that hospital at the snap of a finger.
There were demonstrations. There were picket signs. There were petitions. There were sit-ins in the mayor's office.
Everywhere James Conway, who was the mayor, would go for whatever event,
someone from the ad hoc committee to Save Homer G. Phillips Hospital will be there to ask questions. We didn't care where. If it was way south, we wound there. And yes, we became little shadows for him.
We went down to the mayor's office where all of us got arrested. The mayor tried to come out the normal way, but we had the door blocked. So, but what was so strange, he had these two huge bodyguards on the outside of the door.
And about 9 o'clock, police came and said, you know, you got to go. The building got to be closed. They said, no, we came to see the mayor, and we're going to be here until he sees us. So after a whole lot of discussion, they said, if you don't leave, we're going to lock you up. So we said, lock us up. We were on the second level. They asked us to go down to the first floor to get in the paddy wagon. So I said, no.
They had to carry us out on stretchers to from the second floor.
They were really tired when they got finished with us.
It's funny now, but it was not funny then because I think we were.
Of course, when you look back on certain things, it's not funny then. When you're in the situation, that's why I say, when you look back on things, the things them where you're supposed to, you know, it's not so serious. I mean, not this situation, but some situation, if you just look upon it, it's not as serious as the reaction to the situation, and then the reaction become even worse than the situation. As we proceed, people them attack them story, and their story nice, our history so rich.
It's funny now, but it was not funny then because I think we were all afraid.
The protests were organized, and we marched through the community. We marched downtown. We marched everywhere that we could to draw attention to the fact that we were losing this. And we knew that if you lose the hospital, you lost the community.
It only took 2 votes on the Board of Estimate and Apportionment in order to put money in the budget to save this hospital, to keep it running. And it didn't come to a real flashpoint until 1978, when the comptroller made a promise that he will not put a penny into the 1979 budget to operate this facility here. So essentially, the hospital was closed because we had an irresponsible, racist, uncaring politician in the name of Raymond Pussage that colluded with the mayor to get it 2 votes out of 3 to take money out of the budget that would be used in order to continue to operate this facility.
The day that they closed the hospital, I was at home. They had told us all to take off. And like I lived on the back side of the hospital. So I heard helicopters, you know, flying in the neighborhood. And I'm thinking, what the devil is that? And then when I looked across the street, I saw all of these police cars.
I was at work as a head nurse on 1 North, and they had stopped hospital admissions. Now, Homer G. Phillips in the African American community, the emergency room was always accepting patients. So that was really strange. And then people became aware that they had brought moving trucks, and I went to the switchboard to let folks know that they were coming to close the hospital. And then everybody kind of got in alert and notified their neighbors. People in the nearby community were, you know, in the streets, and folks that were coming to work was finding out that the hospital, you know, was closed, and they were transferring patients and removing equipment and stuff from Homer G. Phillips. And that was August the 17th, 1979.
I was here at the day that the hospital was actually forcibly closed. I had started coming my usual way over Annie Malone Drive, which was Good Avenue at that time, and I was met with the police see, we did not have cell phones at that time. And the first act was to cut off the switchboard. So we could not make, no one could make a call in or out.
Community rose up in arms, basically surrounded this hospital.
And I had never seen anything like that before. It was just amazing that they had that much policemen, that kind of police power over there. I didn't know what they were expecting or anything, but it was something.
You have politicians.
We said that they can muscle up them force, trust me. It's never a problem, people. What? You must be mad. Anytime you think say you're bad, go against the force, right? Even today. And I know man want decide say them want to give it their life by going against police. But again, that's a different story. People, there's so much we can explore, right? But as we continue.
It was something.
You have politicians, you have ministers, you had students, you had young people. Congressman Bill Clay, his office was here every day, around the clock. Senator Gwen Giles, Mary Ross, Alderwoman Mary Ross, Alderman, Freeman Basley. They were literally under siege, but they surrounded this hospital for almost 20 days.
People were quite beside themselves and upset and emotional. Even as they tried to take care of their patients, the ones that were there, and be normal or routine, but still the tension, and the nervousness and the anxiety was shown by all. I mean, some people were actually crying.
It is important for the record to show that this community did not give up this hospital.
Take your business from lawn.
Oh yeah. Don't forget to buy a sauce, other sauce, some more come people. Buy some delicious jerk sauce. Sodium free and delicious. Me have to do my own advertising because all of these advertising are popping up. Again, usually when time I watch these shows, me just let the ads them run. But it's weird in time me watch them, you don't even get that much ads. But the more you watch, the more ads you get. That's true. As we proceed, people.
They did not give up this hospital. It was stolen.
Their goal was to get in, sneak attack, shut it down, get everybody out of there, and do what they had to do. And that's the way they handled it, rather than telling the public at a particular time, we will be here and we were going to shut it down. And there would have been a much larger crowd. Even the staff and people like that, they didn't let them know.
People, what me say when the story with the ass when they give us present and it full up of the people them in the night them open up the ass. Them never tell the people them say people in the ass. So when people are gonna do anything wrong, them not gonna tell you. Them not gonna give you a heads up. I am said if them did tell them that there would be it would be a bigger fight to what these people want to accomplish. So no matter how you want to fight a situation like that, it's a non-win situation because the people them don't decide from the head, The man win in position by saying he's gonna shut down the hospital and the people them vote him in. Are the same thing with Trump. Trump said I'm gonna deport everybody who are criminal. And some people think that some criminal is different from some criminal. You know, for them eyes, all criminal are criminal. And if you are one criminal, you can look on the next criminal and say, get rid of that the criminal. Even though overall that's what it is happening. Just that this world, the people them in this world is, some of them are not human. They're not humans. As we proceed.
They found out the day that the people were coming to close, shut the doors down. Closing of this hospital was a military operation. It was 5 a.m. in the morning. Helicopters, police dogs, policemen on their horses. You know, the state national guard put on notice, and it took that kind of a military operation to snatch a jewel from the people in this community.
Officially, the city might say that they closed Homer G. Phillips on August the 19th. That's the official. That's just like pronouncing somebody dead. They pronounce Homer G. Phillips dead to them on August the 19th. Well, it was really August the 17th to the community.
What you see here is just an office. You say, what is the significance of this office? This is the site of the new Homer G. Phillips emergency room. It was built approximately 1977 to 78. The hospital then closed in 1979. And many people said, the city just spent $2 million on a new emergency room. They certainly are not going to close Homer Phillips Hospital. And some of us said, if you don't vote, if you don't participate, you won't get what you want. And indeed, the hospital was closed in 1979.
To have the hospital closed under the circumstances was just a horrible affront to the.
Just to say, okay, and don't think just because they invest in it, them not go shut it down. What, right? Them have money for shut it down, but them not have no money for keep it going. It's how people do things, you know. It's how people do things. So if you not work for make it change, trust me, it not go change. It go stay the same way. As we proceed, people.
To the conscience of those who really believe that their legacy as African Americans was really based on that hospital, and so to have that closed under cover of darkness, and then to have a protest the next day only met with uh, police with dogs in the cars, really to those in African Americans in St. Louis, it resembled the Bull Connor days of Birmingham, and it conjured those images, and it just really created a lot of anger, which is some of that is still there.
If you notice the people and the organizations that closed Homer G. Phillips Hospital, they were not of St. Louis. It wasn't important to them. Like Black radio, it's not important to some people. It's like other Black institutions, like HBCUs. It's not important to those who are outside of it.
See? When you hear that, people, if it's not important to anybody, Why should they? They have no interest. If it's not important to them, why should they look about something that's not important? That are the hardest thing, Even back then, the people them must say it, but we can't understand that it's only important to the people it's important to. Your family only matter to you because your family is important to you. Nobody don't care about your family. When them fire all of them people there, you think so them say, oh, your family is important, so we are go. No, that's the truth. That are the people, that's the fact. That's why I say it's so important for support each other. Look out for each other. Uplift each other. Respect each other. The same thing with them people you talk about, it don't change, Because we refuse to change it, people. We refuse to change it. We, us.
To use, it's not important to those who are outside of it. You have to be a part of it to feel that love for it and to support that love and support the structure itself. If you just check out who closed Homer G. Phillips Hospital, who was involved, and you'll see that they didn't care about not only Homer G. Phillips Hospital, but African Americans in general.
This is a sweatshirt that my daughter, who was 7 or 8 at the time, around the struggle to reopen the hospital, and she just adored this. And it says, "Vote yes, Homer G. Phillips, April the 7th, campaign for human dignity." And this is another prize treasure. Reopen Homer G. Phillips, campaign for human dignity.
The fight to reopen the hospital became immediate. The first level of action, of course, was to defeat the mayor who made the decision to close the hospital. We led a major, campaign here to defeat Mayor Conway, and another mayor was elected who promised to reopen the hospital. That was Mayor.
Yeah, well, who promise?
He got in there. Of course, he broke his promise. And in the meantime, we had to then resort to petitions. We had 2 petitions that went on the ballot to reopen the hospital. Unfortunately, 2 of those petitions got more than 50%. The required percentage was 67%, because South St. Louis, which was predominantly white, voted overwhelmingly against reopening this hospital.
Because it never mattered to them. They never seen a reason for the upliftment, the whole story of providing for all of them people that we learn and educate. That didn't matter to them. Because them have everything set up for them already. It's always imbalance. It's always unbalanced. As we proceed.
But the way racial politics plays in this country is they use blacks against whites, whites against blacks, and then by the time they get through, most poor whites and poor blacks are left to just fend for themselves.
People who knew the hospital, who knew the community, and knew its importance to the Black community, worked hard to try to keep it open to no avail. But a gallant fight to make sure it would stay open. Then they came back later to try to make sure it was not torn down, because there was talk about tearing the whole building down. But I think there's pride in the fact that it's still here.
When I first arrived at the site to accept the position, it was interesting to see that the hospital looked totally different than what it looks now. And that was in 2002. So that was the very first year that the facility opened for residents.
I was for a place to live. My husband was in the hospital and he was not going to survive very long. I was told that. So I had to make some changes in my life. So I began to downsize and I looked around the community for senior citizens buildings, and I got turned down a couple of times and I turned some down. But when I came here, there was a gentleman in the hall that said to me, "Excuse me, ma'am, is your name Sandra Williams?" And Sheila, who works in the office here, and my daughter said, "Oh, there's somebody who knows you here." And yes, he did. He remembered me because he had been one of my supervisors in another health department. So I was like, well, this must be the place that God has sent me to.
I needed a place with 24 security. You know, I needed a place where on the inside, I didn't want to be by myself. And someone told me about Homer G. And I happened to come and look around one day, and I'm looking at the amenities, not the people. At a beauty salon there, I got my beauty shop license. They had barbershop, they had the doctor's office, they had 24 security, they had a grocery store. If I didn't feel like cooking, they had a cafe.
Okay, and that's, you see, that's my diaspora city. That's how I build my diaspora city. 24-hour security and amenities right around. You have garden, you have one church, you have, it's just so much, me say, for the people them like-minded people, right? The people them have the same outlook on life, betterment, right? It sounds amazing, not true, people.
24 security, they had a grocery store. If I didn't feel like cooking, they had a cafe. I'm like, wow, this sounds like the promised land that's in the Bible. You know, once you cross that Jordan and go through all them problems, you know, the promised land is there. And that's what I called it when I came in. This is the promised land.
Personally, in order to destroy a landmark like they did, and then some others, some out of town, out of state, come in to refurbish it and say this is a good thing for making living quarters for profit, I thought was disgraceful. I thought Homer G. Phillips Hospital never should have closed, but had it reopened, I think it should reopen partially as a hospital at least. And for them to do what they
up.
But although it's a beautiful structure.
Have you ever felt?
And that's the thing, you know, them always want to destroy it, right? And build it up back in a film image and then sell it. Everything, you know, it's destroy it, build it back up in a film image and sell it back to you. Because all them have to do is just put in the enough money for the hospital continue. Them a do a good job. But just because them do that, may I try to show you, every time you do a good job, this is where the problem comes in. Every time you do a good job, you know, that's where the problem comes in. As we proceed, people.
Partially as a hospital, at least. And for them to do what they've done to it, although it's a beautiful structure, I think it's disgraceful, personally.
I was impressed.
I think it's disgraceful, personally. Because it was a hospital and then turn it in our old people home. And once you turn it into an old people home, yes, it's going to be beautiful, but it's not what it's supposed to be. It's not what it was. All of the great people that might come out there, this could still continuously be a hospital where I turn out great doctors. It's just that may I try to show you how Philly history is rich in a every way. But it's always looked to be taken away from us, destroy, mash down. As we proceed, people.
I was impressed with what it has become, to be very honest with you. When I walked in that front door, I didn't know it was Homer Phillips. You know, Homer was gone. It's not Homer Phillips to me.
This building stood as a model, certainly within the city of St. Louis, of what senior living for seniors could become. And so it was the first time where we saw a full service senior building. We set the standard for that really here. And so that is another testament to Homer G. Phillips, where we begin once again become this symbol of excellence and how it is that we look towards how this should be done. And so I give a lot of credit to the management company and to Ms. Sharon Robnett, who was one of the African-American partners in this, that had a vision for a full service community.
When I look at the building today, I think about what it was. You feel sad, but you also feel proud. That was a special part of your life. You're able to experience something you can share. I can talk about what was, which gives me hope of what could be. But at the same time, I realize it's a special place and time that probably will never happen again. Why is it that these communities have reunions? As bad as they say they were, why is it that people come back each year for a reunion? Because it's a special place to them, and it has special meaning to them.
You see the difference? To us, it means something to us. To them, it doesn't mean absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing to them. What the man said? Why do people come back every year to this spot? Cheese people, may I tell you, this is why we say history is so important for us to be aware of.
In this case, there are serving as Homer G. Phillips nurses. A photograph of Sarah Jane Banks. She was wife of St. Louis artist Spencer Banks. Ellen Bowling Brown, class of 1947. She was also the last director of nursing at Homer G. Phillips. Mrs. Helen Pipes Blackwell, class 1942. She was also an instructor at Homer G. Phillips. Mrs. Velma Jones, she was a nurse in the class of 1943, and also she was the first African American nurse who worked at Barnes Hospital, and she passed away 2010 at the age of 91. And down here, Dr. Eugene Mitchell, he was the director of medical at Homer G. Phillips. He was also a graduate of the University of Missouri Medical School, first African American to be admitted, and the first African American to graduate from the University of Missouri. Okay, over here you see various artifacts, Homer G. Phillips Hospital, a doctor's table, a chair, here's a medical table, and a lot of photographs and newspaper clippings, yearbooks and equipment that was at Homer G. Phillips. Also have a couple of the capes. This cape belonged to Mrs. Velma Jones, and the cap here belonged to Miss Lula Hall. Here's another cape that belonged to Ms. Mary Lane Crawford. And then you had in the center here, you had a uniform that also belonged to Velma Jones when she was a nursing cadet. That she graduated in 1945.
I was able to come over during the renovations, and I was pleased, happy, delighted, kind of fearful, not knowing what I would find. Wanted so very badly to go to my division, my old division, which was pediatrics originally. I asked the gentleman if he would take me up to 5th floor, which is the 5th floor of this hospital on the south side, 5 South. And the feeling that came over me was of sadness. I almost wanted to cry. Yes, I feel that. And all that I could remember was the 2 wards which extended east and west on the south side of the building, where we housed
over 105 patients. At one time, we would have patients coming down the middle. They would be on either sides of the ward in the heat when we did not have air conditioning. And it came back to me that we never lost a patient. Out of those 104 children that we took care of that summer, when it was such a heat wave here in St. Louis, we didn't have adequate staff. But the skeleton staff that we had on 7 to 3:30 shift, the 3 to 11 shift, and the 11 to 7 shift when we only had 2 nurses, took care of those children. Those were the memories that came back to me. And I must have stayed up there with the gentleman for a good 20 minutes. And he just asked that we move along because he could see that I was filling up. I could see it all over again. I love this place. It will never leave my memory. And I'm so proud and so glad that those $300 and some my mother and father sacrificed to send me here. Yes. And the 1 year that I worked to help myself to come to nursing school, I am happy to say I am proud to be a home nurse. Thank you very much. I love coming in here.
I'm from Tupelo, Mississippi. I spent my teen years here in St. Louis before going away to college, and then moved back here to work at Washington University. I've been teaching the Homer G. Phillips course, which is Homer G. Phillips, the Patient, Physician, and Community, for 5 years. The class was developed probably about 10 to 15 years prior. Because Washington University realized that they had a number of students, especially underrepresented minorities, who were interested in health when starting WashU, but weren't applying in the same percentages and numbers.
My family was very excited to learn that I was taking a whole course on Homer G. Phillips and not just visiting there for one day, because it meant a lot to them. A lot of us were born there, so there was a lot of family connection and how much it meant to the St. Louis community when they lived here still. They live mostly in Springfield and Kansas now, so not too much here in St. Louis, but Homer G was a driving force in their community, and to know that I'm in my generation and still learning about it, it's still impacting our family, meant a lot to them.
And so the first part of the course, we go to the Ville, we figure out what the Ville is about, we study the hospital. With that, I wanted to kind of teach the lessons that come from Homer G. Phillips, and that is the fact that the physician is oftentimes more than the physician. He's part of the community, she's part of the community. So she's not just taking care of a particular health need, she's taking care of the whole being. I think those are the principles that are important to instill in the students.
No matter what I did after college, I knew that I wanted to help people. That was my main goal. And I think that particularly taking the Homer G course helped me solidify that, because it gave all of us an opportunity to see just different Black professionals that have devoted their lives to helping others. And it also gave us an opportunity to volunteer and work with.
Avez-vous déjà rencontré?
We said that are the thing. That used to be us then. We used to be caring people. We used to look out for it. We wanted to make a difference in a society. We wanted to see betterment. And all of that get lost along the way, people. As we proceed, people.
With children at the Children's Hospital, it really helped me see that helping people is when I felt like I was doing something important, I guess I would say. It's kind of an understatement, but yeah.
We want our students to, if they really want to help people and they really believe that healthcare is that route, that we help them and equip them with the tools, but we can't do that without community. Our physicians couldn't do that without community when they were at Homer G. Phillips, and then they can't do it without community as well.
Homer G. Phillips is just, it's really a major point that highlights a bigger dynamic here in St. Louis and the impact that we've had on the nation, particularly with regards to the civil rights movement. Most of your major civil rights and legal components started right here in St. Louis, going back to the Dred Scott case. And it goes on and on and on. The Urban League was developed as a result of what took place here in St. Louis, all the way up to the present with the Ferguson situation. And so this speaks volumes as to the rich culture that has evolved here in St. Louis and that can continue to grow. And I believe that this is going to certainly put a fire in the community to really take a passion in what we've accomplished over the years.
It's literally a who's who among St. Louis Titans, right? And so, you know, we have people from Dick Gregory and Tina Turner, and so everybody from every walk of life, right? Grace Bumbry, like it's just an amazing place to be at. I heard from an alumni that actual Chuck Berry, right, performed in this very room. It used to be the auditorium, and now it's our library. But you just see those sorts of things all the time with our school and who we are. We're working tirelessly and to get back to that point and even extend. And so that's what we're really excited about.
My name is Becky, and my father is Dr. Earl U. Robinson Jr. Ever since I was a little girl, I remember my father always telling stories about when he was a little boy, when he was living in Atlantic City, when he went off to college, when he went to medical school, ups and downs. There's so many things. My father has just been such an intricate part of my life, and he's taught me so much, and that's probably why I am the person that I am today, is because of him and his philosophies and things like that. But at this time in life, I know that he's getting to the age where his health is a factor, and I really want other people to be able to know more about my father and how he played an important role in medicine, just as a person and as a father. One thing that really touched me is when I finally drove up to the hospital. This is my first time in St. Louis, and I live in Indianapolis, and it's only, you know, a 4-hour drive, and it was just interesting that I had never been in St. Louis before. And coming down that street and pulling up to the hospital, I've seen all these pictures, and I didn't know what I would feel when I first got here, but I felt a sense that it was the right timing, it was meant to be, and I'm doing something super amazing for not just my grandfather, but for my father and my family. In the entrance, I saw this picture years ago when my grandfather was standing next to this stairway, and I didn't know exactly where it was, and I assumed it was, you know, the entrance of the Homer G. Phillips Hospital. But, you know, now that it's a retirement living home, I walked in, was shown that it was the steps that my grandfather originally stood next to. And the one thing that I wanted to do was stand right there and be able to be in the same place that my grandfather stood. And I told Joyce, I said, please take a picture. I have to send this to my father right away. And I called my father.
People, I will tell us, people are tell us that, oh, when we pass on, we're not forward again. But how is it not that at the same gene, the same everything, only a different form? Same energy, same ideology. Well, some people stray from. But the greatness of us, man, the greatness of us right through history. That's us.
I called my father later on that afternoon to let him know that I walked in the hospital, that I got to stand right there at the steps. And the first thing my father said, your grandfather is extremely proud. And I just, let him know that that it's a dream come true. Originally, my father and I, we discussed about doing this project, and he wasn't sure if it was going to happen. But I think every day that I see that this team is working so hard to make this happen, this film is happening, and I'm just grateful, and I'm just really passionate about what I do and what I put my mind to, and I'm just so thankful. I really am.
Brown melanin, beyond intelligent, original originator, royal bound, heritage skin.
Okay, people. I tell you. Within that, you see the greatness, perseverance, strength, the beauty of us people. It's really unlimited, But I say, there's always gonna be obstacles. Our very existence is based on obstacles. Because the only way we can reach the next level is the obstacles. As we proceed, people, again, I want to thank everybody for the support, right? All the likes, all the thumbs up, all the shares, right? All the stop buys, all of the things I want to know is important. Again, me see my subscription is going up, so obviously I'm doing something. So I'm gonna keep on doing what I'm doing. We have some really, really interesting topic and some interesting people coming up. I'm gonna tell you, so where greatness can't end. Right, people? Reach 100, we want to reach 200 subscribers. Right, people? I'll continue to grow the channel. Because say I pure niceness over here. So thank all the people them again. Manners, respect, always.